Long County 911, do you have an emergency?
I have a 16-year-old daughter who apparently snuck out of her room last night. She has not been home, hasn't went to work, can't get a hold of her from any of her friends. I am scared to death.
Has she done this before?
No.
We didn't think she'd run away. She had no reason to run away. She was happy. She was a happy kid.
16-year-old Skylar Neese went missing in July 2012 after sneaking out late at night and jumping in an unidentified car.
I started going through all her friends, asking every single one of them, whose car is this? Nobody knew. We got so many false reports, but at least people were looking. At that point, we would have done anything to get answers.
Among those searching were her best friends Sheila Eddy and Rachel Schoaf.
Sheila was crying, saying, how come my best friend run away from home and not tell me?
But Skylar's closest friends would become prime suspects.
We actually did search warrants on their telephones, Facebook accounts, Twitter accounts, just to find out what they were hiding from us.
And investigators would eventually discover the two 16-year-olds had brutally murdered their apparent best friend.
Those girls had done the worst thing you could ever do to someone. Take someone's life. What in the hell gives them the right to think they can choose between life and death of an individual?
I never believed two 16-year-old girls killing their 16-year-old best friend. They were always in pictures and going everywhere together just to kill their best friend. Never dreamed of that.
We live in a world that we don't want to accommodate the idea that two teenage girls could commit murder. However, we have to get used to the idea that there are some women who will take the lives of other people.
That woman is pure evil. And when I mean she's pure evil, you could look through those eyes and there's nothing there. That woman is just the devil.
They had every chance in the world to back out of that, and neither one of them did. That's a special new brand of sickness. Star City has always been a very friendly town, very nice town, and still is.
Star City is a small town in West Virginia, a population of about 2,000 people. There's not a whole lot of crime. I can't think of many people who lock their doors in that community.
And Star City was just more of a misdemeanor crime area. Very few felonies would come out of Star City. It is a good place to have a kid and raise a child there.
It was in Star City that the Neese family decided to settle, with their daughter Skylar playing a key role in their decision.
Skylar wanted to live in Star City. We were searching for a place to live, and Skylar fell in love with it.
Skylar was born in February 1996. She was Dave and Mary's only child.
She was, you know, hands-on, always a happy baby.
She was our only child, so we did spoil her, and she was definitely a daddy's girl, and she was, she wanted to play ball, she wanted to be outside, she was an outside person. She was a pretty active kid, yeah.
Skylar's personality was she was very vivacious, outgoing. She was a little shy around strangers. But after you got to know her, she would talk your head off. Again, I mean, she had a strong will. She wasn't afraid of anything.
Skylar is always the fun, energetic kid, and then she also had sassy side to her. If you were to give something to her, she knew how to give it right back to you.
Skylar had a part-time job at a local fast food restaurant. It was a Wendy's. She absolutely loved it. In school, Skylar had straight A's, and she never had to work really hard to get her grades in school because Skylar was a very, very intelligent person.
At 8 years old, while in elementary school, Skylar Neese met Sheila Eddy, and the two became best friends. Like Skylar, Sheila was also an only child.
Skylar had been Sheila's friend for 8 years, inseparable. They were like that. They always did everything together.
But despite being best friends, by the time Skylar and Sheila moved on to high school, it was clear they had very different characters.
Sheila was more of the comedian, I would say, of the group, but she was very dark in the way her humor was. If she didn't get her way, she got very mad very quickly. Yeah, she would usually get in trouble more than what most of my other friends were.
A new girl, Rachel Schoaf, moved to the same high school as Skylar and Sheila, and soon the three of them were inseparable.
Rachel, she was the star student for choir. She came from an all-Catholic school. She was the nice girl. She was very proper.
The two best friends were now a trio, and like any teenage group, they spent a vast majority of their time on social media.
I know Skylar did do social media. As far as what they shared, we had no clue.
All three were involved in social media. All three posted on Twitter and Facebook. Probably posted a little bit too much, but that's typical for any teenage girl. There were days where they would each have dozens of posts, sharing every thought and feeling. Maybe some should have been kept private. Some positive, some negative. A lot of those things that we all deal with as teenagers, but they found their way on social media.
Young people use social media to communicate with each other on a regular basis. But if you're only ever engaging with that young person on a face-to-face level, just through simple conversational transaction, then you only get to see that tiny bit of what that friendship group might be like in reality. There's a kind of parental culture that interprets teenagers' life in one particular way that might or might not be related to what's actually happening in the teenager's life. And that becomes even more dramatic and more difficult to really get to the truth when you're then using social media.
We gave Skylar an amount of privacy that we thought she deserved. You know, we thought everything was going fine. We never heard anything from Skylar that would suggest otherwise.
The relationship between the three girls seemed harmonious, but below the surface, tensions were growing.
If we had paid attention to the social media, we might have got an inkling of, wait a minute, you know, these three girls are not getting along as well as we thought they were.
Some of those around them began to notice a breakdown in the girls' friendship.
Rachel and Sheila had secluded themselves from all other friend groups. I would always see them off to the side beside each other, and they were always talking very quietly. And they didn't really want to talk to a whole lot of other people.
But no one could imagine what the tensions between these best friends would lead to.
That morning was like any other morning, and we went off to work like we always did. I came home at noon and walked in, and usually Skylar would be up ready, and I knocked on her door, no answer, and I said, "Come on, baby, you got to get up. Daddy's got to get back to work," and still no answer. So I got a coat hanger and I popped the door open, and her bed hadn't been slept in. It was still made, and she was a slob, so I knew she didn't get up and make her bed. And I looked and saw the window was open, and that scared me. And I checked, and her cell phone charger, her hairbrush, her makeup, all that stuff was still there.
Shortly after the Neeses realized Skylar was missing, they received a phone call from her best friend, Sheila Eddy.
Sheila had called us and said that she had to tell the truth of what her and Skylar had done the night before. And she said Skylar had snuck out her window and went with Sheila and Rachel. They went driving around town and they were getting high. And she had dropped her back off at the house. So of course I'm instantly angry.
Sheila told Dave and Mary that she'd dropped Skylar back around 11 p.m. But there was no sign of Skylar the following morning, or that she had slept in her bed that night. Dave and Mary became more concerned when they got a call from Skylar's employers, asking why she'd not turned up for work.
The job called us and said, "Hey, is Skylar coming to work today?" Then we flipped.
Skylar's disappearance and failure to show up for work led her panic-stricken parents to call the local Star City police to report her as missing.
Long County 911, do you have an emergency?
I have a 16-year-old daughter who apparently snuck out of her room last night. She has not been home, hasn't went to work, can't get a hold of her from any of her friends. I am scared to death.
Has she done this before?
No.
They did send an officer down. He took our statement.
Unfortunately for Skylar's distraught parents, the police labeled their only child as a runaway.
Teens going missing in West Virginia, the ones I worked, I'd say about 90% of them was a guaranteed that it was just a runaway, and just because they were upset and were having family issues, domestic issues at home, and just wanted to get away from them.
Initially, I thought that Skylar was a runaway as well, just given maybe because it had happened before at my high school where a couple kids had just run away for a couple weeks just to get away from their parents, and then they came back.
Backing up Star City Police's theory that Skylar was a runaway, a review of CCTV footage from the night she disappeared showed her leaving the apartment complex where she lived at 12:30 a.m. and getting in an unidentified car.
And we saw the vehicle she got into, which showed that she was willingly getting into. She wasn't being forced or held at gunpoint, so we knew Skylar wasn't trying to run away, or it didn't seem like she was in a rush of running away. She just walked up nonchalantly into the vehicle.
Because she willingly got into this vehicle, the police considered her a runaway.
The vehicle at the time that we were looking at, Star City had no leads on it.
The police were unable to get any solid information from the footage.
The CCTV video was very grainy. It was shot from quite a distance away. It was hard to identify anything too specific in it. You couldn't pull a license plate.
Other than the fact that Skylar had willingly got into the mysterious car 90 minutes after Sheila Eddy had dropped her home, police had no leads as to who owned it and why or where Skylar had gone. Skylar's dad, Dave, tried to find some answers.
I got on social media and tried to find out whose car that was and who had picked Skylar up. And I started going through all her friends, asking every single one of them, whose car is this? Nobody knew. We didn't think she'd run away. She had no reason to run away. She was happy. She was a happy kid. She had everything she wanted. We loved our child more than anything in this world. And the thought of her being somewhere where we didn't know where she was safe or she was okay, it's the most helpless feeling in the world.
Weeks go by, with the Neeses unable to contact Skylar by phone or social media. She failed to attend school and her part-time job. The authorities continued to believe she was a runaway, but there was still no sign of the missing teenager.
But then time started to pass, and you started to go, okay, well, what's going on? She hasn't returned right away. The police then started asking for public's help, trying to find Skylar. Star City Police put out flyers and posters asking for information on where she might have been.
Skylar's mum and dad, Mary and David, were doing all they could to help bring their daughter home.
Early on after Skylar goes missing, Dave and Mary are posting flyers, they're holding vigils. The University High School community holds vigils that brings out many students, including Rachel and Sheila. They join in trying to find Skylar. Everybody just wants to kind of know where she is.
Since Skylar's disappearance, her two best friends, Sheila Eddy and Rachel Schoaf, were also helping in the search.
They were always either with Dave and Mary. They were helping them to try and find Skylar. They were doing social media posts. They were going around town. They were spending pretty much most of their days, if not all their days, especially Sheila, trying to find Skylar.
It seemed that Skylar's disappearance was beginning to affect her best friend, Sheila Eddy.
At one point, Sheila showed up at our house and walked into the house and asked if she could go to Skylar's room. And then about 5 minutes later, I heard this crying. I opened the door up and Mary had Sheila, her arm around Sheila, and Sheila was crying, saying, "How come my best friend run away from home and not tell me?"
It was still pouring through the Morgantown community. Everybody was still looking for her. She was still missing, and it was still catching me off guard. I was still surprised that she was still gone after all this time.
The small town of Star City became swept up in the mystery of what happened to Skylar Neese.
We had multiple rumors where Skylar, left with a gypsy guy and was traveling the world. She got kidnapped and was in the sex trafficking, where she partied and drug overdosed, had an overdose of some type of drug, died there on the couch, and they buried her body somewhere out in Blacksville, which then we had rumors of her saying that she was thrown into a cave or mine shaft, because we had a lot of mine shafts out there.
We got so many false reports, but at least people were looking.
Because it's a small town, everybody had a theory, right? And there was everything you could think of, from aliens to just simple, she ran away to a friend's house, she's hiding out in somebody's basement.
Other stories were that she had become a heroin addict. Dave actually made his rounds downtown and visited all the heroin haunts, even stopping some of the addicts on the street and talking to them, showing her picture, wanting to know if they had information. Had they seen her? Did they know her? Was she in any of the drug houses? And of course, none of it was true. It was stories.
I knew my daughter didn't run away from home. Skylar, she loved life and she loved her mom and dad. We knew that. We just knew we wanted Skylar home. We'd have been so damn glad to see her walk through that door. If she would have walked through that door, it'd have been the best day of our lives.
And I have to say, after the first 2 weeks, it wasn't even 2 weeks.
First weekend.
The weekend when she didn't come back home on Monday, I knew she wouldn't be back.
She said, "Dave, what if she doesn't come home?" And I said, "Don't you ever, ever say that again."
But, you could feel it.
And I knew it too. I just didn't want to hear it.
Prior to picking up the Skylar Neese case, Corporal Chris Berry of West Virginia State Police was investigating a local bank robbery that occurred around the time of Skylar's disappearance.
We were going through a list of suspects, and one of our top lead suspects, we noticed that Skylar Neese and her two friends, Sheila and Rachel, were attached to this lead suspect in the past of parties and hanging out. Skylar went actually missing around the time of our bank robbery case. We might have believed that she could have been a part of this bank robbery, or because this bank robbery, something could happen, and the lead suspect had done something to Skylar and was scared and had to get rid of Skylar.
Believing there could be some connection between Skylar Neese and the bank robbery suspect, the West Virginia State Police went to visit the Neese's apartment building.
They asked if they could go through Skylar's room, and at that point we would have done anything to get answers.
We weren't really getting involved in Skylar's case at that moment. That was still Star City Police's department's case. We were dealing with the bank robbery case, so we were still focused on the bank robbery.
While searching Skylar's room, the detectives found her diary.
I picked up Skylar's diary and I started reading through it. I asked Dave Neese permission if we could take the diary as evidence and look into it further and see if we can analyze it and find anything and other clues. We did take the diary, but at the time we were using it. We were using Skylar's diary to try to solve our case, the bank robbery case. The only evidence we really took was that diary at the time. We took some pictures of the room. We did notice about the wall charger, the makeup, the hair products, and everything that Mary Neese said that Skylar would always take with her if she was going somewhere.
When Chris Berry finally came in and looked at the room, and he told us he didn't think she had run away. And we asked him, what do you think happened? He said, I don't know, but we will find out. And that's when the state police became really involved.
We slowly began to just take over the case of Skylar Neese's disappearance. One night, I traveled down to the Sheets, literally a quarter mile from our office, and also a quarter mile from where Skylar Neese's apartment is, and began just for any luck of looking to see if we could see that exact vehicle pass in front of their cameras around the time after Skylar was picked up. Sheets is a gas station, and they actually had really good CCTV video surveillance for us, where it were good crisp cameras that they could actually zoom in on for us and still be crystal clear.
The surveillance footage revealed a matching car passing the gas station a little after Skylar had left her room on the 6th of July, 2012.
And I said, yeah, that looks like it. That looks like our exact match. And it showed us going out towards Blacksville.
Blacksville, West Virginia, is a small town less than 20 miles from Star City.
I remembered I saw Skylar exiting her bedroom, but an hour and a half prior, she supposedly left with Rachel and Sheila and returned.
The police recalled that earlier in the case, Sheila had called Skylar's parents to explain that she had picked Skylar up and dropped her home after driving around town.
It just dawned on me, why haven't we looked at Sheila or Rachel's vehicle? So I wanted to go back and watch that video because for some reason I kept thinking, why haven't I seen the girls' cars pick her up? I want to sit down here, start this video surveillance from beginning to end, which was 4 hours long. And we sat there through the whole 4 hours, all the way up to when we saw the vehicle come and pick up Skylar. We never saw her exit her residence, her bedroom, anywhere. And I knew right there, the girls were lying to us. We need to re-interview Sheila and Rachel again, because they're lying. And Sheila finally owned up to it and advised that was my vehicle.
So later on, police were able to identify the vehicle as Sheila Eddy's vehicle, and that helped police connect some dots.
With the vehicle being revealed as belonging to Sheila Eddy, Skylar's previously doting best friends now became suspects.
When they finally figured out that the car that Skylar had gotten into did in fact belong to Sheila Eddy, that's when things turned and stories started coming unglued.
And that was kind of the first concrete piece of evidence for police that something bad likely happened, that it wasn't just a runaway, that it wasn't just a missing person case.
The rumors at the time is that Rachel and Sheila, they were involved, they knew more information, and then they wanted to release. They just were being quiet about it. Even if they weren't the ones who had ultimately led to Skylar's disappearance.
As the investigation went on and we started realizing the girls were lying more, because when Sheila admitted to that was her vehicle, her whole story completely changed.
Several months after Skylar Neese's disappearance, Sheila Eddy and Rachel Schoaf were brought in together for police interviews, but questioned separately as suspects.
We didn't tell her that we had the video surveillance going out, the vehicle going out to Blacksville. She kept denying. They went left and went towards downtown Morgantown. But Sheila had this attitude that Sheila would come in to the office dressed in a way where kind of inappropriate for an interview, bubbly attitude, smiling, laughing, giggling, being on her phone, no care of attitude. And I remember watching her through the video surveillance saying, you gotta be kidding me. This girl's way too bubbly for her friend who's been gone for months and nobody knows what's going on. All the other friends are heartbroken and hurt, and here's Sheila just smiling, giggling. We kept interviewing Rachel and Sheila nonstop. It was almost a weekly interview. Rachel didn't really want to talk to us as much. She stayed distant. They lawyered up. We had both Rachel and Sheila do a polygraph, and they both failed bad. But the state of West Virginia, polygraph can't be used in the courts. Sheila laughed about it. She giggled and she goes, I don't know why I failed. I told you the truth. And she goes, your machine's just wrong. She played off it was a game, and this wasn't a game. You know, your best friend's missing, and you're sitting here giggling, laughing, telling us that our polygraph machine doesn't work. And it was a very creepy, weird, bad gut feeling with Sheila.
There was a belief that they might have known more than they were saying. They were Skylar's best friends. How could they not have known where she was going, what she planned to do? These were teenage girls. They shared everything with each other. How did they not know where she was?
We actually did search warrants on her telephones, Facebook accounts, Twitter accounts, just to find out what they were hiding from us. We actually did a ping on Sheila's cell phone the night of Skylar's disappearance. And we noticed that 3 o'clock in the morning, Sheila's phone pinged off a cell phone tower located in Blacksville. It was 100% sure that we knew Sheila was out in Blacksville at 3 o'clock in the morning.
The investigators also did a search of Rachel Schoaf's house.
We actually found Rachel's diary, and there was a post handwritten by Rachel herself on the morning after Skylar's disappearance of her talking about very high spiritual religious stuff. You know, dear Lord, please take me down the golden path to forgiveness of all the sins I just committed. And it was pretty shocking what I read of something really bad happened. We noticed after everything we were getting into with the search warrants involved and interviews with everybody we talked to, we noticed that Rachel was starting to crack. She was doing weird things. She was having issues at her home. She was starting to have panic attacks, what I was told. She was having problems at school. We actually started focusing on Rachel more because we believed that Rachel would be the first one to crack, that the pressure was getting to her.
On the 28th of December 2012, almost 6 months after Skylar's disappearance, Rachel Schoaf had a mental breakdown and was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Days later, Rachel confessed to the killing of Skylar Neese.
Rachel said, we did it. We stabbed her, meaning Sheila and her stabbed her. And she said, we counted and we went on 3 and we stabbed her. And she advised they kept stabbing her until they quit hearing noises. What we were told, though, by Rachel was that Skylar did fight back, and she was able to get a knife away from Rachel and stab Rachel. And we actually remember an injury being on Rachel. And she ran through a briar bush and where it has a bunch of thorns on it, cut her leg. And now we know that it was actually Skylar fighting back and was able to retaliate and stab Rachel in the leg. I was blown away. I remember driving and I stopped on the side of the road and took a minute just to collect myself to figure out what just happened, because I was just as shocked myself. I believe what Rachel confessed to is that they got out of the car, they planned on taking Skylar out in the middle of nowhere and stabbing her to death. And they said when they got out of the car, they played like they were going to smoke weed, but Rachel and Sheila played off like they didn't have a lighter, so they asked Skylar to go back to the car and get a lighter. They said as soon as Skylar turned around, Rachel and Sheila looked at each other and counted to 3. When they hit the number 3, they pulled the knives out and began stabbing Skylar in the back.
This detail about counting to 3 sounded eerily familiar to Chris Berry.
And I remember the Facebook message that Sheila posted stating, "Wow, did we really go on 3?" And right there was Rachel, or right there was Sheila toying with everybody and literally confessing to a murder over a Facebook post.
There's probably upwards of 50 stab wounds on Skylar when she dies. The girls intend to bury her body along the side of the road, but they're unable to dig a hole in the ground. So what they did was they kind of pushed her off the road a little bit and covered her remains with twigs and branches and leaves and anything they could find around. They then head back towards Star City and Morgantown and begin to act like nothing has happened.
In my experience, murders fall into 2 distinct groups. The first type of murder is sort of 5 minutes of madness, where the person does something unforgivable and actually they don't know why they did it. The other type of murder that I encounter are when there has been a great deal of planning and lead up to the murder. And that's what I see in this case. I see in this case that, that they're going to manipulate Skylar to go with them to a particular place where they previously identified that they're going to kill her.
Their motive for murder was still a mystery, but the night Rachel confessed to the crime, she led police to the spot where they killed Skylar and attempted to hide her remains.
It was a cold night that night. It was dark, and she couldn't really recall where it happened. And of course, when they killed Skylar, it was pitch black also. They didn't find the body that night. The FBI came out and used their K9 to locate for a body. That's how they found Skylar.
The authorities had to break the tragic news to Skylar's family and friends.
The FBI and the state police called us and said, "We need to talk to you." And they met us at our apartment building and told us that through investigation, we are 99% sure we found Skylar. And my first question was, is she alive? And they said no. And the wind went out of my sails, so to speak. It was one of the worst days of my life. It's pure hell. Knowing something you hoped for so long is now gone. It's not a happy feeling at all.
I had always put the thought that Skylar had passed away in the back of my head. I didn't want to believe it. But once I became aware that Rachel was involved, and then finding out shortly after that Sheila was involved as well, and that Skylar had died, I was dumbstruck. I was surprised, like how could you go from being best friends growing up and just decide to murder them in cold blood?
They took us to what's now known as Skylar's site. And that's where they found Skylar. On a back road in the middle of nowhere.
Skylar Neese had been missing for 6 months before she was found.
Every day of that 6 months is the most helpless feeling you can ever imagine. You're a parent who loves their child unconditionally and more than anything in the world, and your child's gone. Imagine. There's just no feeling like it in the world. It's horrible.
I never believed 2 16-year-old girls killing their 16-year-old best friend. They were always in pictures and going everywhere together just to kill their best friend. Never dreamed of that.
Eventually, the police were able to use forensics to find one last missing piece of the puzzle.
Sheila Eddy's car, police searched it. They found blood in it. It came back to Skylar's DNA.
This valuable piece of DNA evidence allowed the police to finally arrest Sheila Eddy and charge her with the murder of Skylar Neese.
From what I've been told, there were tears when she was arrested and taken to juvenile detention ahead of court proceedings.
Both of Skylar Neese's killers were caught, and the mystery behind her disappearance was solved. But when questioned as to why they would kill their best friend, Sheila Eddy and Rachel Schoaf gave a shocking reply.
The best answer that anybody has ever given was they just stopped liking her. It seems weird to say best answer because that's not much of an answer. There's a lot of different ways you can stop being friends without killing somebody.
I asked the prosecutor, why? Why'd he do this? She said, Dave, I wish I could tell you, but I can't. She said the only reason they gave is they don't want to be friends with her anymore. And Mary and I both, our jaws hit the table because we're like, what the hell do you mean they don't want to be friends with her anymore, so they kill her? That doesn't make sense. And she said, Dave, that's the only answer they gave.
We live in a world that we don't want to accommodate the idea that 2 teenage girls could commit murder. However, we have to get used to the idea that there are some women who will take the lives of other people. And in terms of a folie à deux, that's French for a madness shared by 2. And often in a folie à deux, there's a dominant and a subservient. And it's quite clear to me that Sheila Eddy is the dominant and Rachel Schoaf is the subservient. But the subservient comes to accept the worldview of the dominant and completely does the dominant's bidding. And the bidding in this case is to take Skylar's life.
Facing murder charges, Sheila Eddy and Rachel Schoaf were brought into court for pre-trial hearings. Because of the horrific nature of the crime, both girls, though under 18, would be treated as adults.
So after Rachel confesses, they send out the release about the remains. There's still all these questions about what is going on. It's not till another press release comes in that Rachel Schoaf has confessed in court to the crime. She has pled guilty to murder. And during the middle of the hearing, she is transferred to adult status. She's basically charged as an adult.
Both Rachel Schoaf and Sheila Eddy were initially charged with first-degree murder, the highest possible charge in West Virginia. But Rachel's confession and assistance in finding Skylar allowed her to plead guilty to the lesser charge of second-degree murder.
Rachel Schoaf, for your conviction of the offense of murder in the second degree, the felony charged in the prosecutor's information in this case, it is a sentence of the court that you be imprisoned in the West Virginia State Penitentiary for a period of 30 years.
Rachel was sentenced to 30 years in prison, which made her parole eligible after 10 years.
Of the 2 perpetrators, it was Rachel Schoaf who attempted to apologize for her actions.
I don't know if there's a proper way to make this apology. because there are not even words to describe the guilt and remorse that I feel each day for what I've done. May God bring eternal peace to Skylar and the entire Neese family. Again, I'm so sorry, and I pray each day for everyone involved, and I pray each day for forgiveness.
At Rachel's sentencing, she got up and read this makeshift apology. And what I'll say about that is, you apologize for bumping into somebody, or you apologize for stepping on somebody's foot. You don't apologize for premeditated first-degree murder.
Skylar would not be where she was if it wasn't for Rachel Soph. You said yourself, Your Honor, this is first-degree murder. She should not give any leniency, and she can take her apologies and everything else and sit on them because that's about what they're worth to me and my wife.
They had every chance in the world to back out of that, and neither one of them did. That's a special new brand of sickness.
Sheila is facing a first-degree murder charge and life in prison. There's no death penalty. The room was packed. Typically, it's me and a few lawyers in the room. This one was packed. The Neese family was there.
The whole courtroom was just filled with bailiffs and officers to make sure that nothing would happen.
Everybody's kind of awaiting the trial because it's going to have all the details, right? We're going to hear from witnesses, we're going to hear from police, we're going to know what happened, and we'll finally have all those answers that we've been waiting for 6 months. But then word comes down that Sheila has decided to plead guilty to first-degree murder.
Sheila Eddy, how do you plead to the offense of murder in the first degree of the felony charged in count 3 of the indictment in this case?
Guilty.
So Sheila's plea hearing was also a sentencing.
The Neese family sat in court while their daughter's supposed best friends pled guilty to Skylar's murder.
We didn't really want to hear anything from either one of them.
You could just see the blood boiling in his face. He wasn't turning red, but you could see just how angry he was looking at this girl who was in his house days after his daughter went missing, crying, trying to figure out where Skylar was. And it turned out Sheila had killed her and then went back to cry with the family.
That's how much that bitch played us.
Sheila Eddy, for your conviction of the offense of murder in the first degree upon your plea of guilty, it is the sentence of the court that you've been imprisoned in the West Virginia State Penitentiary for the rest of your natural life.
Sheila Eddy was sentenced to life in prison, but was given mercy, which made her parole eligible after 15 years.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the story was behind that, but yeah, supposedly they're eligible for parole soon. Yeah, it's not what we would have chosen, but we pretty much had no choice.
While Rachel Soph may have demonstrated remorse in court, this was not the case for Sheila Eddy.
Sheila's hearing was no emotions. She just sat there and shook her head, and there's no soul in that woman. Sheila is very narcissistic. She is a psychopath. That woman is pure evil. And when I mean she's pure evil, you could look through those eyes and there's nothing there. That woman is just the devil.
Every time I was in the courtroom, I had the feeling that Sheila was a psychopath. The classic definition of a psychopath, that she just did not feel remorse.
I actually told everybody that I do believe if this case wasn't solved, there would have been other victims. I do believe Sheila would have continued to kill people. I do not put that past her one bit. She is that evil.
The resolution of the Skylar Neese case was able to bring some closure to the community of Star City.
We know these girls are going to prison. We could, as a community, start to move on a little bit. For the Neese family, it was very hard. The anger was still very prevalent. They were still very mad. They were still very hurt.
Those girls had done the worst thing you could ever do to someone. Take someone's life. What in the hell gives them the right to think they can choose between life and death of an individual? That's not your right, that's not my right, that's not anybody's right.
A lot of cases like this, you never find the body. And we were fortunate enough to recover Skylar. We solved the case, found the body, got Skylar a proper burial, and put the bad guys in jail.
In May 2013, due to the efforts of David and Mary Neese, Skylar's law took effect in West Virginia. This amendment states that an Amber Alert must be issued for every missing child, regardless of the circumstances surrounding their disappearance.
You're never going to move on completely from your only daughter being murdered, but they had started to relive their life, and you could see them coming to grips with what had happened and what their new life was going to be moving forward. That they were never going to let anybody forget Skylar.
At this time, forgiveness for me is impossible. Forgiveness is a choice you make. And as far as forgiveness goes, they'll never get it. My daughter was the most important thing in my life. And they took that from me. And I don't give a shit what they did to me. Skylar is the victim here. We're not the victim. They took that girl's life away from her. A life that was full of such promise, such hope. And they took that. So forgiveness is never, ever gonna happen.